The Galactic Empire had conquered countless worlds, reducing civilizations to footnotes in their history logs. Their warships, massive monoliths of metal and energy, blotted out stars as they advanced. Among their latest acquisitions was Earth, a primitive planet, its people insignificant in the grand scheme of the cosmos. The conquest had been swift, almost effortless. What resistance the humans had mounted had been crushed beneath the weight of superior technology. But the High Command had intercepted something unusual in their planetary scans, an anomaly. A single human child, radiating energy patterns that defied their instruments. That was why the Empire's most elite extraction unit was dispatched to an unassuming rural settlement. It was why they descended upon a small wooden house under the cover of an artificial storm, their figures blending into the howling darkness as their ships hovered overhead. The soldiers moved like shadows, their exosuits humming faintly as they breached the house with mechanical precision. The family inside had no time to react. A man, presumably the father, reached for an old hunting rifle, but before he could even aim, a pulse of blue energy sent him crashing into the far wall. His wife screamed, but a second pulse silenced her. The only one left standing was the boy. He could not have been older than 8. His dark hair was tousled from sleep, his feet bare against the cold wooden floor. He did not cry, nor did he beg. He only watched them with wide, unblinking eyes. For a brief moment, the lead soldier hesitated. There was something unsettling about the child's gaze, as if he was looking through them rather than at them. But orders were orders. The soldier lifted his weapon, a sleek, metallic rod that crackled with subjugation energy, and the momentary hesitation was gone. The boy's body went limp as the pulse struck him, his small form crumpling to the ground. The soldier secured him in a containment field and carried him out into the storm. Above, the Empire's flagship loomed like a metal leviathan, its hangars yawning open to receive the extraction team. Within minutes, they were aboard, leaving nothing behind but the whispering wind and the fading scent of ozone. Inside the ship, the child was placed in a sterile observation chamber, transparent walls glowing with containment sigils. The ship's commander, Overseer Scifi, observed him from an elevated control room. Scifi had overseen hundreds of extractions, yet something about this mission unsettled him. He had reviewed the reports himself. This was no ordinary human child. The energy signatures pulsing within his body were unlike anything recorded. The scientists whispered theories, spoke of potential weaponization, but Scifi felt a strange, gnawing unease. Below, in the chamber, the boy stirred. He sat up slowly, rubbing his wrists where the bindings had been. When he looked up, his gaze locked onto Scifi through the observation glass. The overseer felt an odd sensation in his chest, like a pressure that had nothing to do with gravity. He shook it off and activated the intercom. "You are aboard an Imperial vessel." Scifi's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and precise. "You will answer our questions." The boy didn't speak. He simply tilted his head, as if considering whether to acknowledge the demand. Scifi's patience thinned. He gestured to a nearby technician, who pressed a sequence of controls. The containment field flickered as the chamber's artificial gravity increased, pressing down on the boy with crushing force. Still, he did not cry out. The scientists exchanged glances. Any human, even a trained soldier, would have crumpled under such pressure. The boy merely exhaled, his breath fogging slightly against the containment barrier. Then something changed. The energy readings on the monitors spiked. Lights flickered. Instruments shorted out. The containment field wavered. Scifi barked an order, but before the technicians could react, the emergency systems triggered. A deep, resonant hum filled the chamber. The ship trembled. The boy lifted his gaze once more, and for the first time there was something in his expression, a silent acknowledgement. The lights failed entirely. For 3 seconds, the entire warship was plunged into darkness. When the emergency systems rebooted, the boy was still in his chamber, unharmed, unmoved, but the readings had changed. The anomaly was no longer theoretical. He was awake. The warship drifted in uneasy silence, the lingering echoes of the power disruption unsettling even the most seasoned crew members. In the sterile halls of the research deck, scientists murmured over flickering data displays. their fingers flying across holographic interfaces as they struggled to make sense of the readings. The boy remained in his containment chamber, unchanged in appearance, but the ship itself seemed to pulse around him, as if the very metal structure recognized his presence. Overseer Sci-fi stood with arms clasped behind his back, his usual impassive demeanor betrayed only by the slight clench of his jaw. He had interrogated war criminals, dismantled insurgencies, and extinguished rebellions, yet never had he felt this gnawing uncertainty. The boy had done nothing. No overt aggression, no visible resistance, yet his presence alone had disrupted a ship engineered to withstand planetary sieges. The head researcher, a being of elongated features and iridescent skin, exhaled through narrow slits along her throat. Overseer, this child is beyond classification. His physiology is human, yet his neural activity is something else entirely. We attempted standard analysis, but the data corrupts upon collection. It's as if he exists in multiple states at once. Sci-fi's gaze did not leave the containment chamber. The boy sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes half-lidded, seemingly unbothered by the silent panic surrounding him. A child, no weapons, no visible defenses, and yet a growing, unspoken fear rippled through the ship's command structure. "Proceed with direct neural interrogation," Sci-fi ordered, his voice a blade cutting through the hesitation around him. "We will extract what we need." The scientist hesitated, then nodded sharply. A set of mechanical arms extended into the chamber, equipped with precision neural probes. If the boy would not speak, his mind would be unraveled one layer at a time. The moment the probes made contact, the ship shuddered. Not a mechanical malfunction, not an external attack. Something deeper. Sci-fi stiffened as the deck beneath his boots trembled, an unnatural hum resonating through the hull. The containment glass frosted over from an unseen force, and the monitors exploded in bursts of white static. Inside the chamber, the boy remained seated, but the air around him shifted. The pressure in the room became unbearable, as though reality itself recoiled from his presence. The scientists staggered back, clutching their heads, their minds assaulted by something beyond comprehension, an unfiltered awareness, a presence that was vast and endless, stretching beyond time and space. Then the probe snapped, not from external force, but as if they had never existed to begin with, erased from reality by an unseen hand. The boy exhaled softly, and the ship buckled under a force unseen yet undeniable. The emergency klaxons wailed. Red lights pulsed through the corridors as fail-safes activated, sealing the research deck from the rest of the vessel. Soldiers stormed into position, weapons raised, but Sci-fi knew, it would not matter. The containment chamber dissolved. Not shattered, not destroyed. It simply ceased to be, unraveling like mist in the presence of something greater. The boy rose to his feet, his movements unhurried, deliberate. The faintest glow traced the veins beneath the skin, and for the first time he spoke. "You shouldn't have taken me." His voice was quiet, yet it carried through the ship, reverberating through the metal, through the minds of every living thing aboard. It was not a threat. It was a statement of inevitability. Sci-fi drew his weapon, his years of training pushing aside the primal fear clawing at his thoughts. He fired. The energy blast surged forward, then stopped midair, frozen like an insect trapped in amber. It flickered once before imploding into nothingness. The soldiers opened fire in unison. Beams of plasma, concussive charges, weapons capable of disintegrating armored foes. None reached their mark. The air rippled, and suddenly they were gone. Not vaporized, not deflected, simply erased. Sci-fi barely had time to react before he felt it. The weight of the boy's gaze upon him. It was not the look of a child. It was not the look of a man. It was something ancient, something infinite, peering through borrowed flesh. "You do not understand what I am," the boy said, stepping forward. The ship groaned as the very concept of distance seemed to fold around him. "You took me because you thought I was like the others. But you have made a mistake." Sci-fi fell to one knee, his body betraying him as unseen forces crushed against his mind. His vision darkened at the edges, his thoughts unraveling under the sheer weight of something beyond mortal comprehension. The ship trembled. The walls bent inward, as if the entire vessel was being drawn toward a singularity. And then silence. The pressure lifted. Xiphon gasped, realizing he was still alive. Around him, the ship's systems rebooted, flickering hesitantly back to life. The boy stood before him, his expression unreadable. "I am leaving now," he said simply. The air around him shimmered, and in the next instant he was gone. Not through teleportation, not through any technology known to the Empire. He had simply ceased to exist within their understanding of reality. Xiphon remained kneeling, breath shallow, mind frayed at the edges. The ship, the crew, the very fabric of his existence had been touched by something beyond their grasp. The realization settled over him like a weight that would never lift. They had not captured a child. They had awoken a god. The warship hung adrift in the void, silent and wounded, its systems barely clinging to functionality after the impossible event. Across its corridors, soldiers and scientists remained paralyzed, their minds struggling to process what had transpired. The boy, no, the entity, was gone, but the echoes of his presence still lingered, woven into the ship's very structure, an afterimage that defied time and logic. Overseer Xiphon remained kneeling long after the boy had vanished. The weight on his mind had lifted, but something deeper remained, a fracture, a fundamental shift in his understanding of power, of existence itself. He had spent his life enforcing the Empire's will, believing in its undeniable supremacy. But in a single moment, the illusion had been shattered. The Empire was not invincible. There were forces beyond their control, beyond their comprehension, and they had just provoked one. The comms flared to life in a burst of static, and then the voice of Supreme Chancellor Vorix filled the bridge, sharp with irritation. "Overseer Xiphon, your silence is unacceptable. Report immediately. What is the status of the anomaly?" Xiphon swallowed, his throat dry. He could still see the boy's face in his mind, those eyes that held entire galaxies within them. He forced himself to stand, to steady his breath. "The anomaly has left the ship," he said carefully. A pause. Then, incredulous, "Left?" He did not escape. He did not need to. Another silence, longer this time. Xiphon imagined the Chancellor seated in the depths of the Imperial Citadel, surrounded by advisors and war strategists, all waiting for an explanation that did not exist. The Empire did not tolerate uncertainty. And yet, that was all he had to give. Then the alarm screamed. It started as a tremor, a low, thrumming vibration that spread through the warship's hull. At first, the crew assumed it was a delayed aftershock from the previous anomalies. But then the tremors grew violent, shaking the vessel with force that should have been possible in the vacuum of space. The starboard shields failed, flickering out of existence as if they had never been there at all. External scanners went blind, unable to process what was unfolding beyond the ship's walls. And then they saw it. Through the viewport, the darkness of space rippled, shifting like the surface of disturbed water. Something vast loomed just beyond the edges of perception, a presence that had no form, yet cast a shadow deeper than any celestial body. The crew could not comprehend what they were seeing, because it was not meant to be seen. Then, one by one, the Imperial fleet began to vanish. Not destroyed, not obliterated, simply gone. Warships, battalions, entire armadas blinked out existence, erased as if they had never been built. The Empire's mightiest vessels, the same ones that had raised entire civilizations, now reduced to nothing but memory. The bridge descended into chaos, officers shouting over one another. Their voices edged with something that had never been heard before on an Imperial flagship: fear. Xiphon's hands clenched into fists. He had known this was coming. The moment the boy had left, he had understood. This was not revenge. This was not an act of war. This was correction. The Empire had taken something it was never meant to touch. And now, the universe was setting itself right. On the central display, a distress signal flickered to life, a transmission from the Imperial core, where the High Command resided. The feed was unstable, the Chancellor's face distorted by interference, but the terror in his eyes was unmistakable. "We are under attack. Not by ships, not by weapons, by something else. Our fleets are collapsing. Our worlds," the transmission cut out. A heavy silence filled the bridge. The Empire, the most powerful force in the known universe, was crumbling. Xiphon exhaled slowly. There would be no counterattack, no strategies, no survival. This was the fate they had written for themselves the moment they had laid hands on something beyond them. He turned away from the chaos, his mind strangely calm. He had spent his life enforcing the Empire's will, believing in its right to rule. Now, as its legacy dissolved before his eyes, he found that he felt nothing at all. Across the vastness of space, on a quiet blue planet untouched by the Empire's dying grasp, a boy stood atop a hill, staring at the night sky. His eyes, reflecting the light of distant stars, held no malice, no anger, only understanding. It was done.